Tissot. I'm Research Communications Officer at the Rosman Institute at the University of Edinburgh. And I'm also part of the organizing committee of this conference. I'm very happy to be here, and there are some other people from the organizing committee in this session. So today we'll be speaking about strategies to better communicate. And our first speaker is online. So Mark Stickles and also Karina Nunes. So Mark leads the Wolseley Supercomputing Center, and he will be speaking about Australia's fastest and friendliest research supercomputer. Is that right, Mark?
It is. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. I'll share my screen. And then. Is that the presenter view or the?
No, we see the we see the kind of slide view. So, well, the presenter view, yes. So we see what the next slide will be. No, that's perfect.
That's better. Okay. Well, look. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to present at the conference. Delighted to do so, but would have obviously loved to have attended in person. But the travel challenges of our time continue, and they continue here in Australia quite severely at the moment. I do know that there are some WA-based colleagues at Jodrell Bank for the conference in radio astronomy and SKA communications. So I'll give a shout out to Kirsten and Liz. And I can't tell if you're in the room or not supporting your colleague in WA, but
I'm Kirsten. Liz is not here though. Liz is not.
Kirsten's there.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Kirsten. Great. Thanks for the support. But I encourage you to connect with Kirsten and Liz. They're doing some wonderful work here in Perth for the global SKA project and the radio astronomy community generally. Before I begin my presentation, though, I would like to importantly begin with an acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land upon which I'm presenting to you from. There's quite a bit of feedback, so I can keep talking, but I think there's a bit of feedback. All right, there we go. Okay, so just a little shout out to everyone. It's helpful if you do mute, and then we're keeping an eye on the chat and can manage some feedback through that way. So what I would like to do is acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which I'm working on and presenting today, and I'd like to do that in their language. Okay.
I don't think this is feedback. I think actually there's another Zoom meeting meshed into, maybe with the same code, because this is another.
No, I think it's Rosie again, who is in a train station trying to head somewhere. So I think the admin person in the room need to mute Rosie again. Thank you.
She's muted now. But I don't have the right.
Okay, it's gone quiet again. So I'll keep powering on. Okay, so what I would like to do is acknowledge the traditional owners in the land in their language. I'll offer Nala Karich, Nunga Mort, Kayan Karak Nijabuja. So what I've done there is acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar peoples as the traditional custodians of the land upon which I'm working on. But the country also means the land, the seas and the skies. And I pay my respects to their elders. Before I also get started, I'd like to offer a shout out to my colleague, Karina Nunes, who you've just heard from, who's my co-author, co-conspirator and co-champion in this effort to promote Pawsey and the wonderful and impactful science that we accelerate. So for some of you might not entirely know what a supercomputer is, but I've got a fair idea most of you do. But I'll offer that supercomputers are essentially hundreds of thousands of computer processors in massively parallel arrays that, coupled with high-speed connections to big data storage infrastructure, are used to tackle scientific problems, simulations, and conduct analysis at times a global scale, or in the case of astronomy, radio astronomy, at an astronomical scale. For a scientific infrastructure communications conference, and for colleagues that I know are involved in the front line of communications, engagement, and advocacy for science and research, I'd like to share with you the story and the strategy of naming our supercomputer. I have a short video just to kick this off and see if this works. I can't hear any audio, but I'm hoping you're getting a little bit of movement.
Yeah, I can see it. Oh, we can't hear it.
You can't hear it. Well, I have no singing voice, but there's some dramatic music that should be playing. And so we put this out as a teaser video on social media. And it was put out a week or two before we were due to announce the name of our system. And we took a different approach. And we had some great responses around the world as people responded to this video. What I will do in the chat, so Karina's going to help me out. So a couple of the videos and animations and links that I talk about, Karina's going to drop those in the chat and we'll make them available for you as follow-up if you're interested. So we named our system Cetonics. And Cetonics is the scientific name for quokka, Cetonics brachius. We had a great response to the announcement, and it really is a reflection of what's a beloved, iconic animal here in Western Australia. It's one of the most popular selfie photo taking animals in the world. So from Chris Helmsworth, Roger Federer, Margot Robbie, they've all visited Western Australia and had a selfie taken with this animal. The Roger Federer selfie taken with a quokka that was taken a few years ago has been seen by more than 500 million people in 45 countries. So it's a popular animal. But before I get further into the story and strategy of Cetonics, here's a little bit more background about Pawsey, not just who we are, but also where we are. So as you can see, you're kind of at the top of the world in Jodrell Bank if you're sitting there in that room, or anywhere around the world on the virtual screen. We're in the southwest of Western Australia. We're a few kilometres out of the central business district, so close to the main city of Perth. We share the same time zone as 1/3 of the world's population. We're also on the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and as I've done is I've paid my respects to them. We kind of think we, in some respects, might seem a long way from everywhere, but we actually think we're the centre of some scientific possibility. Our connection to Jodrell Bank is through the SKA project. We're an essential part of the infrastructure and expertise supporting the Square Kilometre Array and its precursor projects in Australia, the Australian Square Kilometre Pathfinder Project, or ASCAP, and the Murchison Widefield Array, or MWA. And we offer the supercomputing and data processing resources to realise the ambitious scientific efforts of our radio astronomers. So while we're a long way away from some things, we're also really an ideal location for one of the 2 SKA telescope sites. I think we're also a leading location for sun, wind, wave and geothermal development, some of the world's most vast agricultural opportunities and some of the world's most technologically developed industries. We're actually named after a pioneering physicist and radio astronomer, Dr. Joseph Pawsey, who along with Dr. Ruby Payne-Scott and engineer Lindsay McCready, completed some of the pioneering experiments in radio astronomy that followed World War II, building on radar-related research. And they delivered some of the fundamental breakthroughs in interferometry that underpin the science of astronomy, radio astronomy that powers the SKA. As I've mentioned, we're in the same time zone as about a third of the world's population. And in terms of our location, we're as close to Singapore as we are to Sydney. And this year we'll be home to the fastest supercomputer in the Southern Hemisphere. So the story of Cetonics. Cetonics is a $70 million upgrade of our infrastructure. It's a multi-year project. So the Australian government's invested in our facility to upgrade its supercomputing infrastructure, the data storage environment, the network environment, and some of the energy and power infrastructure. It's a significant step change in our capacity. It's a multi-year project, and we're coming close towards the realisation of that project. The technology uplift has been a significant opportunity for us to reaffirm the role of Australian supercomputing and the role that it can play in advancing science and accelerating discovery. The image that you see there is the Wadjuri Yamaji artist Margaret Whitehurst when she visited Pawsey last year and was able to see her artwork on our system, and her earlier artwork is on our previous system, and we actually got her to sign the cabinet. So it was a great privilege to have her visit us. So when I joined Pawsey in 2018, I was told somewhat lightheartedly that one of my major responsibilities would be naming the new system when the current flagship system is retired. So what were the challenges in naming a supercomputer? How do we get people excited about a supercomputer? That's one of the challenges we addressed. How do we have something uniquely Australian and also potentially internationally recognised? And how do we also create the sense of pride and purpose in our home community and raise the understanding of our capacity in the local market? So we had a number of those challenges to consider when we came up with the name, and we did continue on a particular approach that we built here at Pawsey. So our communications approach did start with a great name. So that is a quokka, and that was the name Setonix was one of the decisions that we made. We also have a symbol, and we've built some rebranding around Pawsey and the use of artwork. And we've had a great mascot, and we've had a number of mascots over time. Just to give you a sense of perspective, so this is, I can't see myself in the screen, there I am. Okay, so Setonix, our little quokka, it's a super quokka, so it does have a cape. Not all heroes wear capes. I know there's a whole another presentation we can talk about there. For scale, here we go. That's a roughly to scale quokka wearing a very impressive meteorites tie, and roughly half size is our little mascot.
I'll show you.
So there's about 20,000 of them still in the wild, but they predominantly live on an island just close to Perth, and there's a few on the mainland. But they're quite an emblem for Western Australia. So the approach that we've taken, I think, does take work on many levels, and it reflects the tone and the approach we wanted to take to the world. So the bigger picture on this story around our communication strategy and naming it after a quokka is we do want to tie ourselves back to the science. So Setonix brachius, or quokka, is a unique species that's much loved. And understanding the quokka is also an important area of science. And we've actually supported the sequencing of the quokka genome in order to help protect its the biodiversity here in Western Australia. It's part of an international project that supports the sequencing of Australian biodiversity, flora and fauna. It's the DNA Zoo project. And we'll send you a link to that information as well. We do want to respect and value our First Nations culture and heritage. Of the longest continuous culture on this planet, it's a significant legacy and something that we are very proud to respect and to support. It's an important part of the conditions for operating the SKA is this important relationship with the First Nations people in the region. So we've demonstrated our commitment through the artwork, and there's a great video on our website that has an interview with the artist and reflects the story of the artwork and how it does have a relationship with, in this case, with radio astronomy. We used the Setonix naming as part of a bigger branding process for Pawsey. We've rebranded in the last 2 years as well. And we did start with a traditional institutional name called IVEC, an Interactive Visualization Centre. And over the last 10 years, we've emerged as Pawsey and then rebranded in the last year. It's a contemporary and I think distinctive brand. It represents a data-intensive science. It's a data cube, a stylized data cube. It is a kind of a stylized P on its side, and there's a story attached to respecting our heritage and our connection to radio astronomy, and that's some information that we can also share in the chat. Importantly, it reflects our ambition and our vision. We do want to be more than just a facility. Our goal is to be a hub for science, innovation and data visualization, a centre where industry, researchers, SMEs and others can gather and build new connections. So in naming our system and thinking about our brand in this way, I think we've given ourselves a platform for engagement and a brand that is positive and can be influential. So in this next slide, I'll just give you a couple of illustrations of some of the things that we've done. We do introduce a bit of fun in what we do. We do some serious work, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So that T-shirt that you can see there, that was me very bravely getting one of my my immunizations for COVID, but it's hashtag nerd immunity, and with the Cetonics symbol over the top. And we've been it's been quite popular in sharing that message around Cetonics and Pawsey. We ran an ASCII artwork contest. So the log-on for the new system, Cetonics, has an ASCII quokka, and one of our senior radio astronomers won that competition, and yes, was presented with a quokka as the prize. And we also have used, I think, Cetonics and this growing culture as a means for engagement and community outreach. And there's the image there on the third one is our hosting of the artwork and of the artist and a community representative from the Yamaji Art Gallery. We also are ambitious about supercomputing being an influencer. I think, and again, this next slide I hope illustrates that we're trying to make some inroads in this area as well. With this sort of brand and with this sort of platform, we've taken to being very positive about demonstrating to industry, to government, and to other stakeholders the value of our science and the innovation that it supports. So engaging with local business news. The bottom left image there is of the Australian ambassador to the United States, who I sent a couple of quokkas and a Pawsey tie with the artwork on, and happened to see him on social media a few weeks ago proudly displaying the tie. So I thanked him publicly, and he responded to say that he'd actually given it away because it was in such demand and that I need to send him some more ties. The other colleague in the slide is the West Australian government representative in Europe, who has put a quokka image in the West Australian office in London, and I presented him with a quokka when I visited London a few weeks ago. He's also a former chairman of Pawsey, so we're keeping that connection live. But it's really become a useful vehicle for us to engage and to open up some conversations about the value and worth of the wonderful science that we support. So as I start to wrap up, I'm not sure exactly on time on my screen, but it is for us part of an ambitious program. We have considered this year the year of Cetonics. The full system will be on the floor over the next few months, and we'll look to launch it in its full capacity at a 50 petaflop system later in the year. We have migrated users from the current architecture to Cetonics over recent months in its first phase, and it's a significant uplift of the entire national research computing infrastructure here in Australia. We've also undertaken some innovation around quantum computing, and next year we intend to further that with further national initiatives around quantum computing hardware that we've recently installed here at Pawsey. And then as we look to 2024, we're very keen to continue to tell, I think, these stories on a global stage, and the important role that intensive advanced computing and data capability helps with science of a wider range of a wide array of disciplines. So it's a very positive story. We're very proud of the way we engage, and we support the effort of wonderful scientists in a range of areas, and obviously have a particularly deep connection to the radio astronomy community, not just here in Western Australia and Australia, but around the world. So with that, I will close, and I'm happy to take some questions.
I know it's very late for you. Are you planning to stay till the end of the session? Because I'm just wondering, because of the issues we had in the beginning to start the session, it would be good to move on with the other two conversations and just take the questions at the end. Would that be okay?
I just turned the Pawsey coffee machine off, so supercomputers are actually the secret source of a supercomputer is the coffee machine. But I can reboot the coffee machine, and I'm happy to stay until the end of the session. I'm interested to hear our other speakers.
Thank you so much. Andrea,
where should I switch it on? Or?
You don't have to. So are you logged on to Zoom? Zoom call.
No, not yet. I don't.
I can give you the details if that's.
Okay. So I should leave it up on my face.
Yes, exactly. So you.
Maybe the other person can proceed, or we can ask some
Okay.
questions.
Do you want to go ahead?
Maybe you can start.
Yeah, yeah.
I try to. I didn't know.
Meeting ID.
Okay.
Oh, you.
No,
I
you.
didn't get that.
I'm not after 3 o'clock.
Oh, you're after.
I'm in the next one.
So our next speakers are William Davis and Sam Davis, and they are the founders of Insight Media, and they help scientists communicate their research. I don't know why. No. So they're 4S approach, and they are going to tell you what that means. They use it to communicate research, and they'll tell us more about it now.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about this. I don't seem to be able to get the slide view. Or move it.
Ναι, το οποίο δεν το έκανα επίτηδες, το έκανα κατά λάθος. Τέλεια. Και τώρα δεν μπορώ να το αλλάξω πίσω. Χριστέ μου. Είναι ηλίθιο, είναι ηλίθιο. Το Meta Business Suite είναι ηλίθιο.
Georgia, could I ask you to mute your mic, please?
Ωρε φίλε, ναι, απλά είναι ηλίθιο, εντάξει. Δεν είναι κάτι. Όλα καλά. Όλα καλά πάμε. Δεν μπορείς να κάνεις cancel, μπορείς να κάνεις, να το κλείσεις μόνο. Δεν το έκλεισα, όλο το παράθυρο. Ωραία. Ναι, ναι.
Georgia?
Okay, I'm ready. Okay. Hello. Hello everyone. Sorry
Όχι
about
τίποτα άλλο.
that.
Δεν. Α, γιατί...
I'm not sure I can talk
Georgia, can
over.
you please mute?
Okay. As introduced, my name is William Davis.
Your computer.
Όπως είπες, δεν το έκανα κατά λάθος και θα πω την ευκαιρία να πετάμε στο LinkedIn. Ουαχα.
Okay, William Davis. I'm from Insight Media, and today I'm going to be talking about. This is very difficult.
Ακόμα τίγκα το κοινό. Ο τίγκα, ο σκορέφος να πει.
Yeah.
15 τους οποίους οι 10 είμαστε εμείς μεταξύ μας.
Okay, so I'm going to try to be talking to you today about strategy, segmentation, storytelling, and social media. This is something that we call our 4S approach to communicating science and raising awareness about research. And we've just called it that because they all begin with S, and it's quite a nice way of remembering how we go about these things. So these are some of the research infrastructures that we work with. And we also work with research projects, and we work with scientists themselves to help improve outreach, raise awareness of their work, and importantly, increase understanding of their work. And what we always say is we like to focus on the research that they do. So if we're working with a research organization, we're not really writing so much about their governance structures and those sort of things. What we like to do is focus on the science and tell the stories of that work. So that's our aims. So our actual 4 S's are, as I say, strategy, segmentation, storytelling, social media. So strategy is what, I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with this stuff, but we like to develop an effective communication strategy for organizations. And as I said, with actual projects and with specific researchers to talk about their work. So our work starts with the strategy. We then move on to segmentation. This is where we identify the audience and ensure that we know who we're communicating with. And we're communicating with the people who need to know about the work that we're talking about. Storytelling, now this is the fundamental part of what we do, is we tell stories about science, we tell stories about research in a way that effectively communicates the message that we've decided is needed to get a particular result. And then social media is we pull this out of all the channels and tools that we use. Social media is one of our critical tools, so we've given it its own S, because it's a way of reaching the widest possible, at the moment, the widest possible audience with the message that we think will generate the most interest and lead people back into the research to find out more. So there are our 4 S's. So we'll start. By the way, this is normally a half-day, full-day workshop that I present, so I've condensed it into 10 minutes. So forgive me if I'm rushing somewhat. So strategy, as we all know, we're defining our objectives, what we're trying to do here with this contract or whatever it is with the scientists. We're setting the goals of what we're trying to do, and then we're planning the action that we're going to take. So effectively, that's our strategy, how we do it. And this involves really the fundamental part of this is analysis. So we analyze just what the message is, what the message should be. So we work with the scientist, work with the researcher, work with the organization we're working with to find out what they're trying to say. And we look at we do SWOT analysis, we do all sorts of different ways of understanding what it is they're trying to do, and then understand the science, of course, as well. Then we try and set the target. In other words, we try and identify who the audience is on a sort of global scale, who we're trying to reach before we start segmenting, and what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve with this. So is it a commercial bit of work, or is it something that we want other scientists to see? Those sort of that sort of analysis. We look at channels. So what are the channels we're going to use for the communication? Where are we going to take it? How are we going to get it through? Then we look at the media. What media are we going to use to do this? So this involves analysing the content and the tone of what we're going to actually say. We then start looking in terms of our strategy of how we're going to monitor what we're doing and report it, and then build into that ways of improving what we're doing all the time. So we're looking at whether things are working, whether things are doing what we think they should do, and then looking at how we can improve it if they're not. We look at how we're going to actively engage with our audience. So we've identified the audience, how we're actually going to engage with them, and create some what we like to call it, well, what we all call active communication. So we're actually talking with people as well. Importantly, part of our strategy is putting the right team in place. That's collaboration within the organisation. Who's going to be doing the work? Who's going to be managing the work? Setting up the meetings with the client. How we're going to work with them, and setting mutual goals. So segmentation we move on to now. I'm rushing through, but we're getting to know our audience. So we've identified the type of audience we want to be we're going for, but we want our audience to feel like every message we send out is just for him or her or them. So fundamental, as I say, to all this is understanding the science, the research and the objectives. If we understand that, we understand what we're going to be trying to say. So we talk to the scientists, we talk to the researchers about what it is they're doing. And we, as storytellers, as journalists, as editors, we might not have the full understanding of everything that they're doing in the science, in the lab, but we try and get the story out of them as best we can. We're then moving on to identifying subgroups within the target audience. So how are we going to do this? I'll move on to that. The purpose of this is to build relationships with specific types of people that we'll be communicating with. And we're all the time developing leads of who we're going to be talking, of those we're talking to ensure that we're getting them the right messages, and then we're tailoring the message accordingly. One of our key aims, of course, is to target the media, because through the media, we can access everyone we need to. Just a quick little aside. Einstein said, "You don't really understand something unless you can explain it to your grandmother." It's a great quote, but we like to think that's a good quote to do when we're communicating science. It's very important, but we also look at it in this way: what if your granny has a PhD in quantum physics? Many do, of course. So always remember, this is what we try and keep. There's not one public, no one audience. There's no single audience that you're talking to. There are publics, and each has their own different level of knowledge, experience, expectations. And so what you have to be doing all the time is communicating, targeting your message to this single person. But there are lots of them. So how to segment? We're looking at, I mean, I'm sure you will do this, but the basic stuff is job titles. What do they do in their organization? Who are they? Are they the decision maker? The role, what people's job titles and roles are often different. So what it is they actually do within the organization. Are they an influencer? What roles they have in the group we're talking to? What sector is it? Is it public sector, private sector, industry? So we set up subgroups of all these different groups for us to communicate with. What is the area of their expertise? What are they focusing on at the moment, both either as fellow researchers or scientists or industry? We look at demographics, so gender, age, geographic, ethnicity, ability, disability, some of the things that we talked about earlier in the previous session. Behavior, patterns, so what do they read? Where do they get their information from? This sort of thing. Where do they spend their money on? So we're building a picture of our target audience. And as I said before, we target through the media. So we look at mass media, obviously, and so we have relationships with specific journalists writing about specific topics. We also target the specialist media, so we're hitting the right publications for this. And then we segment this media as well. So we have a segmented media target group as well. So I'm rushing on storytelling. So some things to consider, what we consider when we're starting to tell a story. Well, the stuff we're dealing with is often very complex. So it's a difficulty. So it's something we have to consider very carefully. So we're dealing with stuff that we often don't understand. We need to understand it. So we have to talk to the scientists. But it's often difficult in research. There are often many partners involved and they all have their say. You've got to talk to all of them. But you have to take that on board as well. There are often intellectual property issues with science and research that you have to consider, especially when there are multiple collaborators. And in our experience, like many people in this world, scientists can be difficult, especially when they talk about something they've spent their life working on, and you want to reduce it to a double-page spread in a newspaper. So we have to consider those sort of things. What we've found over the years, doing this a long time now, and this is getting a bit better, some of the things we do, there's a perceived lack of respect in science communication from the people we're trying to communicate about, from the research, from the scientists. So it's a trust building exercise often. They have a fear that we're dumbing down too much, and they don't like their work being labelled as PR, and that erodes our credibility. They want accreditation, peer review, that sort of thing, and we're not going for the same thing with them. They go for it, but sometimes we're going for a different audience. And there is a danger sometimes of over hype and sensationalism, which we, as journalists and editors, we have to avoid as much as possible, so that we're taken seriously as science communicators. This is often the fault, well, it's often caused by many different things, but often universities like to promote their organisation in a way that can lead to this. So what we try and do, as I said, we understand the science. We try and communicate the need, create an understanding for the need to communicate. Why do we need to communicate? So we're communicating with the researchers, with the universities and the organisations, so that they know why we're communicating in the way we're doing. We're developing the message and we're telling the story. Now, I have got rather a lot of tips and things, but I don't have time to do this. But we're looking for the angle. We're looking for how we can explain the message. So a sort of overview of different ways of what we're looking. We're looking for something different. So the man bites dog angle. Controversy in a story. It's not always a bad thing. It's just a different view of things. So we're looking for that. The story needs to be relevant to a particular audience. So I've used the example here. Do old people want to know about skateboarding moves? Some might, but it may not be the angle we're looking for if we're trying to target an older audience. Stories are good if they're topical, or we'll gain traction if they're topical. So what are people talking about? What are they linked in on already? If they're in our target group, then we try and resonate with that. We look at real people. What does this mean? What does this work mean for real people? We're trying to create some sort of emotional response to the work, to the story, so that it means something to the people we're talking with. Statistics are good. People like statistics. They want to know all the facts and figures about things. So we'll try and make sure we're including those where possible. So some tips. I'm really going to have to run through these fast now. So conflict is good. Conflict in a story is. So we're looking to challenge the accepted view, disrupt the market, that sort of thing. I don't mean conflict as in fighting, but if your research is changing the way things are done, that's an angle. Think local. So you're targeting your story on a local level. There might be something that some sort of media in your area is more likely to cover than if it's somewhere else. So think local. Extremes and superlatives. We've heard from Australia about the biggest or whatever it is supercomputer. These work. Superlatives work. Obviously, avoid sensationalism and dumbing down too much. But the biggest, the best, the smallest always resonates in a mass media market. New. So why now? Why is this story relevant now? It's new. It's news. Timely and relevant. Similar thing. So look at what's going on around you. Look at what's happening. Does your story fit with that? The big guy, little guy syndrome. So the David and Goliath. Is your story doing something that's going to help the little guy? Media love those stories. Surprise. Add some surprise to your story. So look at the unexpected. I use the example, chips are now healthy. That's going to get you into the media. So without being silly, look at how you're, again, challenging accepted thinking. Are you affected? Is your story, is it affecting lots of people? The more people your story impacts, the more likely it's going to be picked
Από
up.
ποιο πράγμα?
Από αυτό το
Celebrity.
Ναι, γιατί είναι
Involve
live
celebrities. Get
πλατφόρμα.
comment, political comment.
Και στην
endorsement.
πλατφόρμα live είναι το
Test
έχουμε
driving,
κάνει το
actually.
ένα session ουσιαστικά και τα άλλα δύο με τα Zoom που σας έχω
Human
βάλει.
interest. This is a big one. Human interest is so does this story resonate? Is
Καλό,
this
όχι ότι
one-
γράφετε κάτι κατά την
is this
διαφορετική
story
session
about
στην
you?
προηγούμενη
Is this
νομίζω.
story about me? If it is, I'll read it. And if it is, papers will run with it. React, quick reaction. So look at what's going on
Άρα
around.
βλακεία, δεν έχουν
How does your
πάρει
story
Zooms.
fit in with
Πόσο
that?
μάρα κάνουν.
And then
Vamos a
call
plataformas.
the publication and get in. So good stories are important and interesting, relevant to their audience. We've done all this, so I'll go through. Just quickly now, social media. I won't go through these because I was going to go through each one, but I just want to finish with content for social media. Content for social media needs to be compelling and interesting in its own right. So some people will click on it and link and go and do what you wanted them to do, but your social media content needs to convey a message or the message as much as possible without having people to go and find it elsewhere. Make it visually exciting and arresting. So build a brand with your social media so that when people see it, they know that it's going to be interesting because they keep seeing the same branding. And then listen to what other people are talking about on social media, engage with them and pass on your, any thoughts? There we are, sorry.
I'm sorry that we have to rest.
Sorry, yeah.
So I now have a cold weather, so that will allow me to mute participants, but I just need to figure out how to use it, so we'll get there.
Shall I come over there? Because
Like that, so that the online audience will be.
I'm logged in now,
Ah, okay.
and I hope I can share my slides.
So the next speaker is my dear former colleague and also one of who started the TARI conference here in Sydney. And that's Andrea Volt. She manages communications and outreach at the FRM2 Lutheran Research Source at the Technical University of Munich. And she will tell us
Παίρνει μόνο
about
σαν
their communication strategy. Does anyone know how to interact with Zoom?
Εδώ έχει κάτι που στη γωνία μπροστά αριστερά, μπήκα πριν. Ωραία, έχουμε ένα από μια πλευρά της αίθουσας και από την άλλη. Το κάνουμε έτσι την πίνη, αλλά είναι λίγοι. Δεν το παίρνουμε. Ναι, εντάξει. Εγώ τους το έχω να με στη μόρφη, δηλαδή εντάξει. Και στο πρωί το δίνω κατσούρος. Πήγα να σηκωθώ εγώ, δεν μου λέει κάτι δεν χρειάζεται.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about this, but now you got to speak already a little bit about communication strategy. And I want to tell you how we try to manage communication strategy in Germany at the Research Neutron Source in Garching, Technical University of Munich. Me and my colleague mainly. And yeah, it's most of the time you don't have the time to look behind your work, but we took the time for several months. And yeah, the announcement here in the for the conference was rather for a workshop, and we also applied for a workshop but only got a talk. So, but nevertheless, I tried to integrate some workshop elements. So I want you to talk to your neighbor and shortly discuss a little bit what questions do you need to ask before you start with a communication strategy, and yeah, what you expect from this talk maybe. So maybe 15 seconds. There's not too much time left, but I thought I make it a little bit more interactive. Maybe, yeah.
If you have any targets for conversations, or communications, can help you tell me how they
And I think maybe you can tell me some interesting question or some interesting explanation. Can one of you tell me something?
we have to share now.
Well, you can write it down if you want to, or you can share what the if you want to.
We were talking first thing we also
We're talking about
audience.
Audience. Okay, yeah.
I got one for it.
So I have to. Sorry. Yeah. We started with an analysis, yeah, target groups and so on, and then developed a strategy and then thought about how to implement it. And I will also tell you about some lessons learned. And yeah, the analysis audience, yeah, target groups. That's what we identified as our target groups. We already knew the same thing as you said. We already knew we had the general public, which is quite diverse, and that's how we segmented them. We also knew that there is some politicians that give us a lot of money each month or each year, and that we have to target too. And then there's our staff, and of course the scientists that are the users of our facility, a big audience, and then there are potential users and so on. And we asked ourselves a lot of questions. Do we reach the target groups with the products that we offer? How can we further developments? Have we placed them in a good way? Where can we improve that? And we just made kind of an inventory. What do we have already? I've been there for 13 years already, and there were so many brochures that we printed for each kind of event or for sometimes only a political visit. There are of course our web pages, the social media channels. There are many events. We have an open doors day. We have some special kids activities. We have visitors during the year, like 3,500 a year. We have exhibitions at the Deutsches Museum in Munich now, and of course the press releases. And we thought, okay, there is so much we do. What can we change? We don't have more resources. That's another thing you have to think of. There is only so and so much time, and only so many people that work in communication, and we make the effort and try to find out for which product do we spend how much time. And for example, we wanted to reduce a little bit the amount of time we spend with print products. Sorry, this is still in German, but it's just to show you how we did it. And we found out, it's 12% of our time for print products. Too much, we thought. This is something we could save for social media, for example. That's only 8.5%, or used to be 8.5% of our time. And then we assigned all the products or all the communication channels that we use to the different target groups. And look, do we reach the politicians via social media channels, or do we actually reach all the target groups via our events? And this is something we were very proud of. I don't know that we had this overview, and this kind of was an eye-opener to see, also to show our bosses that we need more communication, need to put more time into the social media channels. This is also something you already said in your talk. How do you develop this strategy? You need the target groups, and you have the communication channels and products to reach them. But you need a content. What do you want to communicate? And you need a goal behind it. What is the goal? Why do you communicate, kind of? And for that, you need to know the mission of your institution, which is sometimes not so well known, or some institutions don't even have a mission, we found out then. Nevertheless, we also thought it's not supposed to be a one-way communication, but we also have to maybe consider the feedback of the target groups. Do they actually like our newsletter, the users they get every 3 months? Or are they just clicking it away? And that's also something I wanted to discuss, but we don't have so much time. So I talk a little bit about implementation. How did we implement that? We actually planned concrete measures. We wrote it also down. It was a 100-page concept that we presented to our bosses, and did some real measures that we wrote down. For example, relaunching our web page, and then print products only where necessary. And this was a good idea to really make some concrete points. And maybe we can shortly discuss again a little bit. I know there's not much time. Okay. Then I come to my lessons learned. It really helps writing down the concept, not just talking about it. Even if it's 100 pages, it's worthwhile the work. It also is helpful to present it. You just have to be prepared to new ideas from the decision makers. But while presenting it, there might be some interesting new thoughts that you don't like so much, maybe coming up. And then we also found out while we were writing the concept and had good ideas, we didn't want to wait until we presented it. We just realized some of it. So do not hesitate to implement your ideas while writing, while in the end, before you present it to your bosses, you can already show the success, and just leave it if it's not successful. And another lesson learned, it's better to be in a team to solve this mammoth task. And yeah, I want to thank my colleagues for doing this together with Anke and me. Thank you for attention.
Thank you so much. It was impressive how we managed to run through it.
Maybe I said 10 minutes.
So unfortunately, we have to bring the session to an end because we are going to start a new session now at 3. So what I would like to do is that we encourage people. There is a Slack channel for the conference, and to reach out to the speakers via that, so you can ask them questions directly. Are the speakers happy with that? I'm really sorry about this. But thank you so much to all the speakers. I thought they were all great presentations and very different as well. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much.